In a quiet town where the echoes of abandoned dreams lingered on every street corner, a story quietly unfolded that defied expectations and challenged the very fabric of what it meant to be rejected. The community had long been trapped in a cycle of limited opportunities, with many young souls feeling the sting of exclusion from the promise of a better future. Among them was a child whose presence was often overlooked, her voice silenced by circumstances far beyond her control. She was someone who had experienced rejection not just from society, but from her own sense of belonging, growing up feeling invisible and abandoned by the very systems meant to nurture her. Her life was marked by struggle, not because she lacked potential, but because the world had failed to see it. Her story, like countless others in similar circumstances, could have been one of despair and resignation, yet something different took root within her, an unyielding desire to rewrite her destiny, and perhaps, in doing so, transform the fate of her entire community. This child grew up carrying an invisible weight, a quiet resilience that propelled her to seek something more meaningful than mere survival. She witnessed firsthand how broken opportunities and scornful attitudes often pushed youth onto paths of despair or stagnation. Her own experience was a testament to the profound impact of rejection, how it can harden hearts or, conversely, become a catalyst for change. She understood that many young people in her town faced similar struggles, feeling discarded, misunderstood, or left behind, simply because society had not yet found a way to see their potential. The problem wasn't just individual failure, rather it was a systemic neglect, a missed chance to recognize and cultivate talent where it unexpectedly bloomed. But this girl refused to accept the narrative of defeat as her final chapter. She believed that even in places marked by neglect, hope could take root and flourish. What set her apart was not her hardships alone, but her unwavering conviction that change was possible. Her rejection evolved into a profound motivation, a drive to create something different, something that offered a second chance to those who had been similarly cast aside. She envisioned a space where opportunity was not dictated by the circumstances of birth or the failures of institutions, but by the capacity for redemption and growth. Her idea was simple, but revolutionary: to build not just a school, but a sanctuary where second chances could be cultivated and celebrated. It was a place where those who had been rejected by the system could find acceptance, guidance, and a new path forward. This concept was more than just an educational initiative. It became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the refusal to give up on anyone, regardless of their past. As her dream took shape, so did the realization that her journey was intertwined with the future of her town. Her vision challenged the very foundations of community expectations and traditional notions of success. The story was no longer just about her overcoming rejection. It became about redefining what it meant to give up on someone and what it truly meant to believe in second chances. With each step, she encountered resistance, skepticism, and inevitable doubts from those who had long accepted the status quo. Yet, driven by her own pain and hope, she pressed on, knowing that her purpose was greater than her personal struggles. Her unwavering belief that everyone deserved a second chance, regardless of their past, became the driving force behind a movement that would eventually ripple outward, transforming the fabric of her city and inspiring others to see potential where others refused to look. Building on her foundation of hope, the girl's vision extended beyond simply creating a space for education. She envisioned a community hub that could serve as a catalyst for broader societal change. Recognizing that overcoming rejection often required more than academic support, she integrated programs that addressed emotional healing and social empowerment. Workshops on self-esteem, conflict resolution, and leadership became crucial components, fostering personal growth alongside intellectual development. She understood that transforming individual lives depended heavily on nurturing a sense of collective agency, empowering each person to believe in their capacity to influence their surroundings. This approach allowed her initiative to transcend traditional schooling, evolving into a movement that challenged ingrained social stigmas and fostered a sense of belonging within a larger fabric of shared purpose. Furthermore, her strategy involved creating networks that extended beyond the immediate community, establishing partnerships with local businesses, artisans, and even distant organizations sympathetic to the cause. Such alliances provided tangible avenues for youth to gain real-world experience, from apprenticeships to entrepreneurial opportunities, which were often non-existent in her town. These connections served dual purposes: They expanded the horizon of possibilities available to her students while simultaneously projecting the community's new image of resilience and innovation. Her school became a living testament to the idea that fresh perspectives and collaborative efforts could invigorate even the most neglected neighborhoods, transforming them into vibrant ecosystems of growth and renewal. Another crucial facet was her emphasis on storytelling and narrative reclamation. She understood that societal rejection often stems from the stories told about individuals, stories that paint them as failures or burdens. To challenge this, she organized storytelling sessions where students and community members shared personal histories of perseverance and reinvention. These narratives became powerful tools, reshaping perceptions and breaking down stereotypes rooted in prejudice and misunderstanding. By turning personal stories into collective histories, she fostered a sense of pride and identity rooted in resilience. This process of narrative reclamation, akin to rewriting a history that had been unjustly tarnished, elevated the community's self-image and planted seeds of hope, grounded in lived experience. Now, consider how this applies when you think about systemic barriers in your own environment. Often, obstacles appear insurmountable because society conditions us to accept limitations rather than question them. Her approach demonstrated that the key to dismantling these barriers lies in creating safe spaces where individuals can rewrite their personal stories and redefine what is possible. Instead of waiting for external changes, her strategy was to cultivate internal strength and collective solidarity, an act of grassroots resistance against despair. This method underscores the importance of agency, empowering those who are marginalized to become architects of their own futures, rather than passive recipients of charity. When individuals reclaim their narrative, they develop an internal resilience that acts as both shield and sword, defending against societal rejection and carving pathways where none seem to exist. Her work also highlighted the significance of persistence in the face of ongoing skepticism. Every step she took to expand her project met resistance, whether from bureaucratic institutions hesitant to fund unconventional ideas or from community members wary of change. Yet each obstacle served as a reminder that true transformation requires relentless perseverance. She learned to navigate these challenges with diplomacy and unwavering focus, often converting skeptics into allies through demonstrations of tangible progress and honest dialogue. More importantly, her resilience illustrated that resistance is not a sign of failure, but an integral part of the process, each setback offering a chance to refine her approach and strengthen her resolve. Her story became a blueprint for understanding that lasting change emerges from a steadfast commitment to an initial vision, even when it faces opposition at every turn. Finally, her journey exemplified that overcoming rejection extends into the realm of self-belief and internal validation. She often recalled moments of doubt when her efforts seemed too small to make a difference. Yet each small success, each transformed life, reinforced her conviction that even modest endeavors can generate ripples that eventually reshape entire communities. This recognition, finding purpose and validation within oneself, became a cornerstone of her philosophy. When you internalize the truth that your efforts matter, regardless of external applause or immediate outcomes, you cultivate a resilience that fuels continuous action. Her example teaches that genuine transformation starts inward, with a belief that change is possible, and that this belief has the power to inspire others to see their own worth and potential. Building upon the foundation of resilience and community transformation, it becomes critical to recognize how innovation often emerges from environments of scarcity. When resources are limited, ingenuity is pushed into overdrive, forcing individuals to think beyond conventional pathways and craft solutions through necessity. In her journey, she discovered that genuine ingenuity isn't born out of abundance, but from the challenge of making do with what's available. For example, repurposing discarded materials into learning tools or creating makeshift classrooms in unconventional spaces exemplifies how adversity can catalyze inventive approaches that stay rooted in practicality. These grassroots innovations, born from constraints, often carry a level of authenticity and adaptability that standardized methods lack, providing sustainable models that are deeply embedded within local contexts. Furthermore, her focus on community-led development underscores that bottom-up initiatives tend to be more resilient and enduring than top-down mandates. When those who are directly affected by systemic neglect are given agency to shape their future, Their efforts tend to resonate more profoundly and produce authentic change. This participatory model shifts the narrative from one of dependency to empowerment. For instance, organizing local committees where residents brainstorm and implement small-scale projects fosters a shared ownership that sustains momentum over time. Such cooperative strategies blur the lines between leadership and followership, emphasizing collective responsibility and reinforcing social bonds that are often frayed in marginalized settings. Through this lens, the act of community members taking charge becomes a form of resistance against disempowerment, transforming passive recipients into active architects of their destiny. Another layer to consider is the significance of cultural identity and storytelling as tools for reinforcing self-esteem and fostering pride amid adversity. When a community's history is marginalized or erased, there's a tendency for individuals to internalize feelings of insignificance. By consciously reviving local traditions, narratives, and customs, she understood that a collective sense of identity could be reconstructed. Celebrating stories of ancestors overcoming hardships or emphasizing unique local talents acts as a powerful affirmation. Such cultural reaffirmation not only reconnects individuals with their roots, but also instills a sense of purpose that transcends immediate struggles. It becomes a rallying point for fostering resilience, as the community begins to see obstacles not as insurmountable barriers, but as chapters in a larger story of perseverance and pride. Reclaiming these narratives transforms collective memory into a weapon against despair, positioning cultural identity as an anchor in turbulent times. Now consider how this perspective applies when faced with external skepticism or societal stereotypes. Often outsiders perceive marginalized communities through a narrow lens of deficiency, focused solely on perceived shortcomings rather than latent potential. This narrow perception can stifle aspirations and deepen feelings of inadequacy. To counter this, her approach involved consciously showcasing local successes, stories of individuals who defied stereotypes or initiatives that yielded tangible improvements. Celebrating these victories publicly is akin to planting seeds of hope that can grow despite prevailing negative stereotypes. It also encourages community members to recognize their own capacity for change, shifting the focus from what they lack to what they can achieve with determination. In this context, visibly demonstrating resilience becomes a form of soft advocacy, transforming perceptions from dismissive to appreciative, thereby further empowering the community to pursue their aspirations. Another crucial facet lies in fostering adaptability, especially in dynamic environments where change occurs swiftly. When institutions and social conditions evolve unpredictably, rigid plans often falter. Her insight was that flexibility, rather than strict adherence to fixed programs, becomes essential for sustained progress. This calls for designing initiatives with built-in resilience, allowing room for adjustment and improvisation based on feedback and shifting circumstances. In practical terms, this might involve establishing iterative learning cycles where programs are continuously refined by those directly involved. For example, if a teaching method doesn't resonate with students, teachers can adapt rapidly without waiting for bureaucratic approval. This mindset cultivates a culture of experimentation, encouraging local stakeholders to view setbacks as opportunities for realignment rather than failures. By embracing variability and remaining open to innovation, the community's development efforts become more responsive and enduring. Finally, embracing a long-term perspective is vital when addressing deeply rooted inequalities. Instant fixes are tempting but often superficial, providing only fleeting relief. Her experience underscored that lasting transformation requires patience, with incremental progress serving as the stepping stones for substantial change. Encouraging stakeholders to focus on generational shifts, such as nurturing values of perseverance, collaboration, and hope, embeds a sustainable mindset. For instance, investing in early childhood development programs compounds over time, gradually altering societal narratives and expectations. This temporal horizon also requires cultivating unwavering belief in the possibility of change, even when immediate results are invisible. In essence, it's about planting seeds today that may not sprout overnight, but will eventually blossom into resilient, empowered communities capable of sustaining their own growth far into the future. Building upon the importance of patience, it's essential to recognize that true transformation often requires confronting the deep-rooted psychological barriers that sustain cycles of rejection. These mental blocks, shaped by years of marginalization, failure, and societal judgment, can be as formidable as external obstacles. Overcoming them demands strategies that go beyond superficial motivation. Introspection and mindfulness become powerful tools for dismantling limiting beliefs, enabling individuals to reframe their internal narrative. When people learn to observe their intrusive doubts without judgment, they gain agency over their own perceptions, gradually cultivating resilience from within. Such practices transform feelings of inadequacy into opportunities for growth, empowering individuals to challenge internalized stereotypes and perceive themselves as capable of change. This process is akin to repairing a crack in a foundation. It strengthens the entire structure from within, making it more resistant to external pressures and setbacks. Another aspect worth exploring is the role of environmental influences in either reinforcing rejection or fostering acceptance. Physical spaces are often more than mere backdrops. They are active participants in shaping behavior and perception. For example, designing communal environments that encourage interaction and shared purpose can significantly alter the collective mindset. When public spaces become hubs of creativity, collaboration, and celebration, they serve as living proof that the community values growth and inclusivity. These spaces might host open mic nights, art exhibits, or small festivals that showcase local talent, transforming the terrain from bleak to vibrant. Such interventions subtly challenge negative stereotypes by highlighting the community's vitality and potential. They also create informal forums where individuals can see role models and forge connections, gradually weaving acceptance into the fabric of daily life. Now, consider how policy reforms contribute to reshaping societal attitudes, yet more importantly, how they must be rooted in authentic engagement with the community's lived experience. Far too often, legislation appears disconnected from the realities it aims to address, producing superficial changes that lack sustainability. To truly make a difference, policymakers need to immerse themselves in the stories behind the statistics. This involves active listening, engaging with local leaders, and understanding cultural nuances that influence community dynamics. When policies are co-created with those affected, they tend to resonate more deeply, ensuring implementation that aligns with local values and needs. For instance, creating pathways for entrepreneurs from marginalized backgrounds involves not just providing funding, but understanding the specific barriers they face, such as access to networks, mentorship, and culturally relevant training. In this way, policy becomes less an abstract framework and more a reflection of genuine partnership, facilitating organic shifts in societal attitudes. Furthermore, value systems must evolve to prize vulnerability and authenticity. In many communities, presenting a facade of strength or indifference is often misinterpreted as resilience, inadvertently preventing genuine connection and understanding. Now, imagine fostering an environment where sharing struggles is viewed as a sign of courage rather than weakness. This shift can be rooted in communal storytelling, support groups, or leadership that models transparency. When leaders openly admit their imperfections, it breaks the cycle of perfectionism and invites others to do the same. Such candor humanizes figures who might otherwise seem distant, creating a culture where admitting flaws becomes a stepping stone toward collective healing. It also paves the way for building trust, especially critical when addressing sensitive issues like mental health or systemic injustice. The act of vulnerability, in essence, becomes a bridge that closes gaps created by rejection and misunderstanding. Finally, embracing the power of hope as an active force rather than a passive sentiment can redefine a community's trajectory. Often, communities mired in hardship fall into a cycle of despair, where the future appears bleak and the present feels unchangeable. However, hope rooted in action can serve as a catalyst for change. This involves tangible steps, small victories that build momentum and demonstrate that transformation is within reach. For example, planting community gardens might seem minor, but such initiatives can foster pride, provide nourishment, and generate economic opportunities. Simultaneously, they symbolize growth and renewal, inspiring others to envision possibilities beyond their immediate circumstances. Hope thus becomes a practice, a daily act of choosing optimism, reinforced by evidence that progress, however incremental, is possible. When communities internalize this act of hope, they stop viewing rejection as the end of the line and start perceiving it as part of a larger journey toward empowerment and reinvention. Now, Consider how the cultivation of resilience can be intentionally woven into daily routines, not just as a sporadic act, but as an ingrained mindset. Rather than waiting for life-altering crises to ignite growth, individuals and communities can adopt deliberate practices that fortify their mental and emotional stamina over time. For example, engaging in reflective journaling enables one to identify recurring patterns of doubt and consciously challenge them, transforming negative self-talk into constructive motivation. Similarly, embracing small discomforts, such as public speaking or physical challenges, can serve as training grounds that build endurance and confidence. These practices function like mental calisthenics, strengthening the capacity to adapt swiftly when unforeseen setbacks strike. This approach echoes the process of muscle development. The more resistance it encounters, the stronger it becomes. Embedding such habits into everyday life transforms resilience from a reactive response into a proactive virtue, making it a persistent feature of one's character. Building further, it's vital to recognize the role of intentional community rituals that reinforce resilience at a collective level. These rituals, whether through shared meals, affirmations, or collaborative problem-solving sessions, create a mosaic of reinforced social bonds. When a community publicly acknowledges collective vulnerabilities, it plants seeds of mutual support that flourish during times of stress. Consider how traditional ceremonies or communal storytelling sessions serve as reservoirs of collective wisdom, reminding individuals of ancestral struggles and victorious pursuits. These shared narratives serve as cultural anchors, providing reassurance that hardship is part of a larger continuum and that future resilience is rooted in accumulated experience. Such rituals cultivate a sense of safety and predictability, establishing a cultural environment where vulnerability isn't seen as a sign of weakness, but as an essential ingredient for growth. Conversely, the influence of leadership style profoundly affects the entire fabric of resilience in a community. Leaders who demonstrate unwavering perseverance during crises set a tone that permeates through every level of society. Their actions act as living proof that perseverance is contagious, inspiring others to emulate their resolve. When leaders openly admit their own struggles and navigate adversity with transparency, they normalize the process of confronting failure. This transparency fosters an environment where setbacks are reframed as temporary and instructive, not terminal. Such leadership cultivates a culture of shared accountability, where collective resilience is harnessed through mutual encouragement rather than isolated battles. The ripple effect becomes undeniable. When influential figures embody resilience, they empower others to internalize that strength, ensuring the community's capacity to rebound and evolve remains robust. Additionally, it's important to examine how developing resilience involves fostering a practical sense of agency, an understanding that individual actions, no matter how small, contribute to larger waves of change. When people recognize that their choices and efforts are interconnected, they become more proactive even in seemingly insignificant ways. For example, a student who consistently seeks additional help, despite initial struggles, begins to see their efforts as part of a broader trajectory of self-improvement. This mindset shifts the focus from passively enduring hardship to actively shaping one's response. The perception of agency empowers individuals to view obstacles not as insurmountable barriers, but as opportunities for mastery. As this awareness spreads through community networks, it fuels collective momentum, each small victory reinforcing the belief that persistent effort, even in the face of rejection, can fracture the walls of despair and carve new pathways forward. Moreover, the process of resilience development can benefit from intentionally reframing failure itself. Instead of perceiving setbacks as personal flaws or definitive endings, they are transformed into essential stepping stones. When a person redefines failure as a form of experimentation, an inevitable phase in the pursuit of growth, fear diminishes and curiosity takes its place. This shift encourages risk-taking and innovation, critical components when breaking free from a history of rejection. Imagine a local craftsman experimenting with a new technique after years of conforming to traditional methods. Each misstep becomes a deliberate act of learning rather than defeat. Emphasizing the growth potential embedded in failure discourages helplessness and nurtures a mindset of continuous adaptation. Over time, this perspective rewires the emotional response to setbacks, cultivating a resilient attitude that views challenges as catalysts rather than catastrophes. Finally, fostering resilience at its deepest level involves cultivating an internal narrative rooted in hope's active presence. It's not enough to simply wish for better days. Instead, individuals must cultivate a mindset of expectancy, where purpose-driven actions are fueled by the anticipation of positive change. This process resembles planting a garden where every seed represents a deliberate effort, and its growth depends on consistent nurturing despite adverse weather. When individuals maintain hope as an ongoing commitment rather than a fleeting feeling, they develop a forward-looking perspective that keeps them anchored during storms. This hope acts as a compass, guiding each choice and action toward attainable goals, even if progress appears slow or delayed. Such internal conviction becomes an indomitable force, an unwavering belief that, through perseverance and collective effort, circumstances can and will shift. It is within this active hope that resilience finds its most fertile ground, transforming rejection from a final verdict into a temporary obstacle in the ongoing journey of growth. Drawing these strands together, we see how resilience emerges not as a static trait, but as an intricate tapestry woven through conscious practices, cultural reinforcements, and collective effort. Each thread, whether rooted in personal perseverance, community solidarity, or cultural storytelling, contributes to a fabric that can withstand the weight of rejection and hardship. The process of transformation is less like a linear ascent and more akin to tending a delicate yet resilient ecosystem, where intentional nurturing, adaptability, and shared narratives serve as essential ingredients for sustained growth. Recognizing the multiplicity of influences that shape this fabric invites us to appreciate resilience not merely as an individual act, but as a collective choreography, orchestrated in response to adversity's persistent call. In light of these insights, the path forward becomes less about seeking quick fixes or isolated victories, and more about cultivating an environment where each element supports the others. When resilience is approached with this holistic perspective, it takes on a dynamic quality, an ongoing dance that requires mindful attention and deliberate reinforcement. As we pivot towards the final reflection, it becomes evident that the true power of this process lies in its capacity to generate momentum. Each small act, each story reclaimed, and each challenge faced with unwavering resolve, adding weight to the overarching force of collective renewal. The synergy of individual agency and communal cohesion produces a ripple effect, one that can transcend immediate circumstances and embed itself into the very DNA of a community committed to growth. Reflecting on this journey so far compels us to see how the threads of hope, adaptability, cultural affirmation, and internal strength are not merely isolated concepts, but interconnected forces that reshape our understanding of what it means to prove resilience in the face of rejection. They operate like the currents of a mighty river, each contributing to a powerful flow that can carve through obstacles, erode barriers, and forge new pathways where none were apparent before. This convergence emphasizes that genuine resilience arises from the interplay of internal conviction and external support, from moments of vulnerability that are met with collective encouragement, and from a persistent belief that the future, no matter how uncertain, remains intrinsically open to possibility. As we hold these ideas in the foreground, the overarching implication begins to crystallize. Resilience is fundamentally a creative act. It demands more than endurance. It requires an active reimagining of oneself and one's circumstances, a conscious artistic process that reconstructs meaning from the raw materials of hardship. Such an act is neither facile nor automatic. It is cultivated through mindful engagement with one's environment and a willingness to participate in ongoing renewal. With this understanding, the notion of overcoming rejection transforms from a passive endurance into a bold assertion, an unyielding commitment to shape a narrative of growth, renewal, and hope against all odds. In this moment of convergence, therefore, the intricate dance of these ideas signals the dawn of a profound realization that the collective capacity for renewal, rooted in layered resilience and transformative storytelling, holds within it the potential to redefine entire communities. It invites us to look beyond individual stories of struggle and perceive instead the web of interconnected efforts capable of shifting the very paradigm of rejection into one of opportunity. The foundation laid by these ideas fosters anticipation for the final reflection, an insight that will tie these threads into a compelling vision for what it truly means to change the course of lives and communities, not merely through effort, but through the deliberate act of reweaving hope into the fabric of our shared existence.